Tigers fans and especially media and social media are freaking out this week about Matt Chapman not signing with the Tigers. It's not maybe specifically Matt Chapman, but of course it drew everyone's ire when that news came out last week. It's sort of just the idea that the Tigers aren't spending shit tons of money, which
Ma- Okay. I
I,
mean,
I, I
now's not the
yeah,
time still.
well, and that's my whole point. And I think it's great. It's fun when teams spend money in the off season, and we love it. I demand that out of my Chicago Cubs every offseason because they're in the third largest market in the country. They are a behemoth. They own their own goddamn television channel. They broadcast their own games. They are a money making machine. They should be operating the way the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, all those behemoths operate. That is not the same with the Detroit Tigers. And you can point to they're not even at $100 million payroll in their payroll right now. They're well below average. I understand that, but I think people are misplacing the point of emphasis or not understanding where the organization is in their process of becoming a competitive team. They're still building that. We are in the second year of the Scott Harris regime. Unfortunately, it is a much longer rebuild that was started by and failed by Al Avila, but we're entering a second rebuild. So it is a period of 7, 8, 9 years we've been doing this shit, and people are impatient, and I understand that, but it is not Scott Harris's duty to completely throw out the plan, spend a shit ton of money on potentially bad contracts that we have seen on many occasions in Detroit, and bury the franchise once again. He needs to be patient, and I think it's not fun fodder on social media to just preach patience, or on the radio or anywhere else, or on a podcast. But I'm gonna fucking do it because it's the right thing to do. It's silly. It kind of got out of control last week when I first heard it with Jim Costa in '97 won the ticket in Detroit. He's the new host of the morning show there. He basically called this strike two on Scott Harris for not spending more money this offseason. He feels like this is a failure of an offseason. And it's not just the first strike against him in his second year, it's his second strike because he's holding the whole Eduardo Rodriguez trade, not trade debacle against Scott Harris as well. That was strike one, he's saying. To which I would
Oh,
say, do you
okay.
also give a strike to one of the most respected GMs and presidents in all of baseball, Andrew Friedman? Because he was equally blindsided by the bizarre behavior and decision making of Eduardo Rodriguez. In fact, you could argue it cost the Dodgers a World Series because they were planning on Eduardo Rodriguez to be in the rotation at the trade deadline. They were actually forced to be pitching one Lance Lynn in the playoffs, because that was their only plan B. So it's not like Scott Harris was, some naive general manager that just got blindsided. Everyone in the industry is blindsided by what Eduardo the weirdo did, in nixing the deal at the 11th hour of the trade deadline. So I thought that was really unfair of the biggest talk show in Detroit, the new host, just calling Scott Harris out on the carpet for that. Then just to automatically call it a strike against him because he didn't spend more money this offseason or spend it the way Jim Costa thinks he should have spent it. I think that's obnoxious. And that's just trying to get headlines and ratings, and as he's starting to host the new morning show. Like I said, it's a question of priorities and understanding where the organization is in its development. The Tigers happen to have a top 5 farm system, basically anywhere you go, or top 10 at least. You could say they're easily say that they're in the top 10 of any measure. They have a good solid farm system. But it's not just that it's, talent that is years away. They actually have, of their top 16 prospects, 12 of them played at Double A or Triple A last year. They are banging on the door to get to this major league roster. It's not years away. Their top prospects are at the highest ends of the organization.
Their top prospects are on top.
Yeah. 14 of 14 of the 30 top prospects are projected to play in the majors this year. 14. Now that includes some that played last year that you still consider prospects, like Parker Meadows in center field, others like that. So it's not Colt Keith, of course, playing second,
Cookies.
but that's an inordinate amount of player like prospects that are ready to come to the majors. So the the thought process of trying to of actually blocking those players with long term deals for big name free agents makes no sense. And to judge the general manager for wanting to experiment and see what those players really have to offer, it's just it's not seeing the big picture, and it's frustrating, but it leads to good ratings when you rip on the general manager. Just say you should spend money. You only have to look to Javi Baez in Detroit as a cautionary tale. We can see what that is. Last I saw, of course, can't can't put too much stock in spring training stats, but he's 0 for 12 last I saw the spring training, building on two of the worst seasons he's had or any top player has had in their career. We just got out from underneath the owner's contract of Miguel Cabrera, which people were complaining about the whole time. They wanted him off the roster. His $35 million was an albatross. Led to lots of joy watching his 500th home run, 3,000th hit. I got to witness the 3,000th hit, fortunately, very luckily. Those were fun times, but you knew the team wasn't going to be competitive. And now we're finally getting out from those deals. Unfortunately, Javi Baez has a long ways to go, but I don't want to block our prospects that have the potential to play huge roles with this team that is projected to finish around 500 once again this year, maybe a little bit better. They had, I believe, 78 wins last season. 82, 83 wins might easily be in the cards. And funnily enough, being in the shitty AL Central, that puts you in the hunt for the division.
It
I think it's
certainly
going to take,
does.
yeah, it might take 87 or 88 wins to actually do it. But if you're over 500 in the AL Central, you've got a shot. So I just again, it's boring. It's bad podcasting to preach patience, but I want to see those prospects. I want to see one of the who I consider one of the best managers in the game, AJ Hinch, to have roster flexibility where he can maximize matchups. He can bring up players that he thinks that will work in the lineup, but then he can move those players around, move them in and out of the DH role if they need to, however it needs to work. He's the master of maximizing matchups, as we've seen him use his bench. He doesn't even call it a bench essentially anymore because every player plays in every game the way he makes pinch hitting moves and such throughout the game. So to tie his hands by automatically signing somebody like Matt Chapman, automatically being the third baseman, you take away opportunities from others. Specifically at third base, one of Tiger's top prospects is Chase Young, who is probably not going to be here in 2024, but he will in 2025 and 26 most likely. So that's a top prospect. I just would not want to be blocked by Matt Chapman. You could say, well, he's got the 3-year contract he signed with your Giants. Maybe that same deal wasn't available to the Tigers. I don't know that he would have signed that same deal necessarily in Detroit. But if he opts out, that's great for you. You know he had a good season, but we've seen with Javi Baez and his deal, if he has a shitty season, you're stuck with him. So it's just the same thing that seemingly fans want to get into all over again with the same Javi Baez system, and it's foolish. I actually saw Barstool Detroit's, I think it's Chris Castellani, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He was almost in tears with some diatribe he recorded and posted on social media about not getting Matt Chapman. How dare you? How dare you? It's just absurd, and it's just the easiest thing to do. Just demand your team to spend money. It's just not the right time.
I think it's bizarre behavior. I mean, the, why not see what you got there? You may not have to spend any money at all, except for
I'd like
these.
to check it out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're not putting anything at risk this year. You know, let it roll. Like you said, what'd you win? 83 games last year.
78. I'd like
78.
to win
Yeah,
83 this year.
yeah. Project. I think you're projected this year to win like 83 or something like that. So, I mean, not that those projections mean jack shit, but
Yeah, we'll get into that maybe next week, but
But
I
I think
just think to
the
judge Scott Harris before a play's been made, before a pitch has been thrown in the season, it's ridiculous.
yeah, I think if you want to like continue to rail on him for the botched trade or whatever, like let it go. It happened. I'm sure he had different information, and then we know from the history of Eduardo Rodriguez, like he's a flake. So
Yeah,
you know,
we did a whole segment on it. You can check it out on our YouTube page, at Weirdo Rodriguez, and the whole history of him taking a leave of absence to deal with family issues in his first season with Detroit. Just kind of skittish flake. Yeah, he's a flake is the best way to put
yeah,
it. You just don't know what he's going to do. Said at the time when he nixed the trade, he said he didn't want to go to the West Coast, and of course he signs with the Arizona Diamondbacks, very far from the East Coast and his family that he said he wanted to be closer to. So whatever.
yeah. I mean, move on. Scott Harris is doing the right thing, and if the team's not controlling the opt outs, like you said, signing a 31-year-old third baseman when you have all this talent that you need to find out now, because then next year or the year after, when the guys, your blue chip prospects are all in the prime age, then you say, Chase Young, you're not a third baseman for us. We're gonna go sign, a slugging third baseman to replace you because now we know. But to take this year and say they should have went and spent all this money is just it's not seeing the forest through the trees, to use a cliche, because you got I'm just reiterating what you said. So I want to just put it from a White Sox perspective. When you have a talented
Mm,
farm system, you roll the dice, and I can tell you, it doesn't always work out. Right? It doesn't always work out.
no.
Sometimes the number one prospect in baseball is playing third base for you, getting $24 million. It's not very good, but or is average. So I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't always work out, but you need to find out why.
Give him a
You
chance.
yeah, give them a
Jesus.
chance, and you got plenty of. I mean, you're only gonna those you've seen it, like Torkelson's only gonna be better this year, and he's gonna be a lot better two
Boy.
years from now. So when he's a
Yeah, I
lot
hope
better
so.
2 years from now, and who's your center fielder who gets injured all the time?
Riley Green's in right
Yeah.
field now, but I think
Oh,
that's who
right.
you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Riley Green. He's probably only going to get better. I mean, your pitching staff is obviously, arguably, one of the best young pitching staffs in baseball. When they can be healthy and out on the field. I mean,
Yeah, if they're healthy,
yeah.
that's the key.
So
But
so there's all these the arrow, as I always say every week when I come in about the Tigers. The arrow's pointing up. Don't have it pointing sideways, guys. Let Scott Harris do his thing. Judge him 3 years from now. Judge him at the 5 year mark, and at that point, feel free to come to moan and bitch about it if they're not in the playoffs and things like that. But to judge
I
him
think
now,
that's a wise rule of thumb. 5 years. I think that's a bit Pollyannish. I think after the season, maybe going to the third, certainly in the fourth year, I think is when he's going to really feel the heat. But for his second, or essentially his first off season
yes.
with the club, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Word Hole Media.